everyone. Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Here we are, Rush Nation. We are back. It's football back tonight. It is week 1. We're here. We've made it. We've survived the off-season. We have survived drafts. We've survived antics, drama, holdouts, injuries. We've survived everything. And we are here in just a few hours' time. We will be watching the Eagles and the Cowboys play in what is a divisional matchup full of hatred, and we will see what happens. But we got to set our lineups. We got to start thinking about winning some ships, and so we're here to do that. May I remind you all that Discord is up and running. The link is below. That is where you will find all my rankings this year. That is the only place I will be answering questions other than our Patreon. Patreon will have a bit more in-depth analysis. We'll do Patreon casts, and we'll get really deep with the strategy, and you'll have access to me all through the days and the week, right? Then I'll help you with lineup suggestions, co-manage, whatever. So you can join our Patreon link as well below. But we're here to talk about our week 1 matchups. This is a 2-part show. Because it's a lot of information in just one part. So we are going to split it up into 2 parts. You'll get half of it today, half of it tomorrow, just to get us in the right spots ready for week 1. Top tip, as always, do not put tonight's players in your flex. Make sure that you get them out of your flex and into your regular spots so that you've got more flexibility in your lineups. Let's get into it. My face comes off the screen. My rankings, how this looks. This is as it stands as of 4 p.m. On Thursday before the game. So if there's any like late injury news, etc., I'm going to change this every sort of few games we go through, so that you can see that, and then we'll do the same again for the second part. It'll be the same parts on here. How this show works, I'm going to go through sort of 8 fixtures now or so, and then the Thursday game, the Friday game, and then the 6 o'clock or 1 o'clock games there, and then we'll do the miscellaneous games, later window games following on in the next part. So here we are. Cowboys, Eagles. I said about Eagles are favored by 7. In this, the over-under set at 46.5 points generally feels a pretty good line. I'm not sure I'm Eagles by 7. It just feels a bit early for that. I mean, it's possible, like of course it is, but it just feels like that's a little bit much for me at this stage. But you know, we'll see where we are, and we'll follow through where we are with that as we go through. But as it stands right now, that is the line. I don't imagine it will change much before we do that. If we're looking at where I've got players ranked, obviously the first one, I'm just pulling up ranks on a different sheet, so I'm not screwing with the thing. I have Jalen Hurts, as you can see on the screen. My quarterback 3 this week, I have Dak Prescott as my quarterback 15. That's where I have them this week. I just think it's going to be a tough one for Dak, out for a long time. It's going to take a bit of time to get going, but I think it will work out well for him over the long haul. But that's just kind of where I have him. And the matchup is tough against Philly. We know how good they are on the outside and defensively as well. Moving to the running back, Saquon Barkley is my running back 2 this week. Javonte Williams is my running back 32 this week. That's where I have those running backs. No other running back in this game needs to be overly considered. Jaden Blue is one to watch and see how that split goes between Williams and Blue. Blue is 53 in the rankings. Miles Sanders 58. Will Shipley way down in the 60s. Wouldn't be starting anyone else in this game, but there is some concern about how much workload Javonte Williams is going to have. That's going to be one of the big inflection points of this game to see how that breakdown happens. CeeDee Lamb is my wide receiver 3 this week. AJ Brown is my wide receiver 10 this week. They are must plays. Devonta Smith as well at wide receiver 33 is a must play. I have Pickens at 35. I don't know how good I feel about this rank personally, but then I'm looking at the others around and I think, well, he should get the ball. But there is a bit of a concern with Pickens. I just don't know if there's sustained volume long term for him. I'm not worrying about any other receiver in those games. In these games, they're just the only ones for me that I'm really bothered about and concerned about. Moving on to our tight ends in this game, and I have them back to back, 13 and 14. Dallas Goedert at 13, Jake Ferguson at 14. These ranks, by the way, are half point PPR. I should have probably said that earlier. So adjust accordingly for PPR, etc. Yeah, I think they're both start plays. I have someone like Brenton Strange. I just think the matchup's a little bit better, which is why I'm ahead. But I've got no problem if these are your tight ends that you're going to start them and they're going to do absolutely fine. But they're not going to necessarily be outstanding. Eagles DST I have at 7 this week. Dallas, I think this is going to be a struggle for them. I have them at 27. I just think there's a lack of playmakers in this team on defense, and that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And then I think I've got Aubrey at 2 and Jake Elliott at 7. And that's where I have those particular players for this game. We move on to Friday night. We move on to Brazil. What a place to have week 1. And it's the Chiefs against the Chargers. And the Chiefs are favored by 3. I feel like that's a very sort of generous line for the Chargers. I don't feel like this is going to be a 3-point game. I think that they will win by more than that. And the over-under set at 44.5, again, feels very low, 44.5. And to be honest, it shows in the bookmakers. I've got a site up that shows me a lot of different ones. You know, it's interesting. We're seeing a lot of like 46.5, 47.5, 45, and 46. It's interesting that the overall line is set at 44.5. There are some definitely weighting that down. So it is interesting to see what happens with that. But 44.5 is the line. Don't be surprised if it does move. I feel like the over is right there for the picking. These players here, I've got Jalen Hurts. I've talked about Jalen Hurts, sorry. Patrick Mahomes as my running quarterback 7. Justin Herbert, quarterback 18. Think that Chiefs D is a little stingy. That's going to be hard to overcome. Amarian Hampton, I'm just not that worried about Najee Harris coming back from the eye injury. He's at 18 for me. Isaiah Pacheco is at 21 this week. That's where I have those. Kareem Hunt's an interesting flex play. He's at 52. Najee Harris at 55. Think they could be interesting ones to watch. I wouldn't start them this week. Start them with great risk, but ones to definitely keep an eye on. I'm very excited about Xavier Worthy this season. He is currently my wide receiver 9. Feel like he is going to do a really good job this season, especially with Rashee Rice out. He's got an opportunity to effectively become a star in this league, in this offense. So let's see if he takes that. Lad McConkey is my wide receiver 12. Again, I just think with all the disruption in that room, they go with the continuity of Lad McConkey. I feel like that's a really good spot for him. Marquise Brown, I have at 53. Keenan Allen at 60. I think Keenan Allen is actually going to have a really good season, but I think it's just going to take a little bit of time to get up to speed. Travis Kelce is my tight end 6, and I'm not worried about starting Tyler Conklin or Will Dissly. They are on the fringes of my rankings at 36 and at 40, respectively. The Chiefs I have as DST 14 and the Chargers at DST 22. I'm not in desperate need to play any of them this week. I just think that the Chargers are competent enough on offense. I don't think they're going to give away many mistakes. And I just think that the Chiefs are leveled up, that they'll do a good job, but I think they'll just struggle to execute sort of those high value plays you need from a DST. And I just think the Chiefs will beat the Chargers by more than 3. And I think that will be the reason why I'm not having the Chargers much higher this week. Dicker is my kicker 4. Harrison Butker is my kicker 6. Both of these are must-start plays. I'm going to scroll this list down to the rest of the quarterbacks for you Superflex fans, and I'll change it after this one. Moving on to the games at 1 o'clock, 6 o'clock on Sunday, and we've got the Steelers versus the Jets. The over-under is set at 41.5, and I tell you what, that is definitely accurate. I think that's the lowest over and under of the week, and it does feel like a real struggle game to watch on opening weekend. The schedulers were not kind in putting this one. Well, I guess that's why they put it in a 1 o'clock slot. It's definitely going to be a difficult game to watch this one. They have the Steelers as favorites by 2.5. It's been significant changes, quarterback changes and offensive changes on both sides of this team. These teams. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. But at the same point, I just am not really loving this from an offensive matchup. Sure, Justin Fields is my quarterback 13. You can absolutely start him. Aaron Rodgers I have down at QB 31. Not a player I'm starting in any format this week unless everything has gone wrong with my drafts. Breece Hall is my highest running back here. He is at running back 22. I just think Braylon Allen is going to dip in a little bit. Jalen Warren is at 29. Caleb Johnson at 40. Braylon Allen 43. Kind of tells you that they're all going to be a bit meh. There's not going to be an elite performance there. But you probably have to start the two that are at the top of the depth chart at this stage. When it comes to wide receiver performance, again, very similar. Garrett Wilson at 21. I think it's going to take some time to get that relationship properly synced between Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson. And again, his quarterback from last season is on the opposing side and will be thrown to DK Metcalf, who again, I think is going to take some time. He's at wide receiver 30. I'm not starting any other wide receiver in this game. I have Calvin Austin down at 60. No one else is coming into the fray for me here. Same goes with the tight ends. From Pat Freiermuth is at 23, Mason Taylor at 25, Johnny Smith at 26. Just not starting them. The over-under is a good indication that there's not going to be that many points. So you don't really want to start many of these players unless you're absolutely necessary. But you know what? You do want to fire up. It's the DSTs. The Pittsburgh Steelers DST is my DST 1 on the week. Be absolutely no shock to any of our Patreons. Think this is a solid D that will deliver for you this week for sure. But I do think the Jets have got a chance there at DST 13. I think there's an opportunity to pick off Aaron Rodgers and make some of those splashy plays. So they will be there for you. We have a new kicker in New York this year. It is Nick Folk, but he's down in 30. But Chris Boswell's the start. He's at 14 for the week. I'm going to move on to my running backs here on the screen so you can start to see the running back rankings. Again, feel free to pause the video and screenshot, do what you need to do on these particular videos. The next game up is the Colts versus the Dolphins. The Colts are only favored by 1.5, which I think is a real shock. That tells you how much people hate Daniel Jones. The over-under set at 45.5 feels like a good line to take the over. I do think there's points in this one, especially as I'm just not buying the Dolphins defense. I think this could arguably be one of the worst defenses in football over recent times. So that'll be interesting to see what happens here. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not necessarily enamored by the quarterback play in this game. I have the quarterbacks back-to-back in Tua at 23, Daniel Jones at 24. They are absolutely good super flex plays, but in one QB, you're probably not starting either of these. However, the running backs is where it's at. Jonathan Taylor is running back 6 for me this week. Devon Achane, despite the questionable tag, and do keep an eye on that one through the weekend, he is quarterback 14 this week. Ollie Gordon, one to watch. If that's the case, he is running back 45 for me this week. I do think he'll get some work, but I don't think I'll be starting him in too many leagues this week. Not feeling that brave week one. Tyreek Hill also has a questionable tag, but I do think he will go. He is my wide receiver 14 this week. Michael Pittman, my wide receiver 25. I think this is going to be a good year for Michael Pittman. I think he'll get off to a very good start against this pretty poor D. Josh Downs is 42. Jalen Waddle is 43. Alec Pierce is 64 as an out-and-out flex play. If you want to go for a random prop bet guy, keep an eye on Adonai Mitchell for this week. I think that could be something really interesting to watch. So, yeah, that's one to definitely keep an eye on. Just moving on to the tight ends here. Not too much you really want to invest in. Tyler Warren is going to be really interesting. I do have him at 11. If you've drafted him, you will be starting him, that's for sure. Darren Waller down at 24 has a questionable tag. I'm just not sure that they're going to use him too much in week one. There feels a significant risk there. As for the DSTs, I do have them back-to-back. The Dolphins at 20 and the Colts at 19. And the only reason I have the Dolphins at 20 is I do think with Daniel Jones, turnovers do become a question, and therefore this might be one of their better performances of the year. Kickers is going to be an interesting situation. We don't know what's going on with Jason Sanders at the moment. It looks like it's Riley Patterson that's going to go. It kind of reflects in my rankings. I have Patterson at 27, Sanders 33. If I kind of knew Sanders was playing, I'd move him up the board a little bit, but I don't. So I'm kind of just hedging a bit here. Spencer Schrader is my kicker 25 for Indianapolis this week. Moving on to the next game, and it is the Panthers versus the Jaguars. The Panthers are favorites to lose this. I like the way that turned out. The Jaguars are favorites to win this. 3.5-point favorites. The over-under again at a generous 45.5. Going to be interesting to see what happens here with Liam Cohen, his first game as Jags head coach. And we're going to see what happens with that one. In terms of the quarterbacks here, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence is my QB 10 this week. Bryce Young, my quarterback 20. I think he will offer some rushing floor that will probably boost him a little bit over some of the others down there, but not one I'm in a hurry to start in a 1 QB league and just sort of scratching to start in a 2 QB league. Chuba Hubbard is my running back 16. I feel this will be one of the better games for him this season, so that's why I have him ranked there. Travis Etienne, I think, will lead this backfield. He is my running back 23. I have Tank Bixby as running back 37. Rico Dowdle at running back 46. And then I have Bishal Tutton at 56. The wide receivers here are definitely an interesting play. Ones to keep an eye out here. Brian Thomas Jr. is at 6. Ted McMillan is at 24 on his debut. Travis Hunter is at 40. Xavier Legette at 56. They're the ones that you can all consider as potential starts or flex plays this week. Moving on to the tight ends, Brenton Strange, good matchup for him. He is my tight end 12. Jatavian Sanders, just think there's not many people to target with the football. He's tight end 18 this week and might be an interesting prop bet for a touchdown if you want to keep an eye on those sorts of things and those sort of things interest you. Jacksonville Jaguars are the DST 21 this week. Carolina are at 31 this week. They're just not all the playmakers there that we need to really take advantage. Cam Little is at 11. Ryan Fitzgerald, the kicker for Carolina this year, is at 28 on the week. Just moving on the rankings here for the running backs. Next game, Giants and Commanders. Over-under again set at 45.5. Feels like there's not a lot of knowledge here. Commanders favored by 7.5, and hard to argue. Although what I will say is that Giants D this year is particularly good. It looks like it's going to be a really good D. So it's going to be very difficult for the Commanders. This is a tricky week 1 game. I don't necessarily love the 7.5-point line. I think this is going to be a lot closer than people think. And I do think Washington might struggle a little bit before they pull away late. And it might take those garbage time points to hit those lines. But they all count. So it's interesting to see what will happen. But patience will be a virtue here, I think, for Washington. It will take time to break down the Giants. Jane Daniels is at 5 this week for me. Whereas I have Russell Wilson down at 29 as the starter for the Giants. When I look at the running backs, Tyrone Tracy is at 27. Austin Eckler is at 31. Ja'Cory Koski-Merritt is at 38. Be interesting to see how that works. Cam Scatterbo is at 47. Chris Rodriguez at 54. I don't feel like you need to start either of those two, but definitely Eckler and Koski-Merritt are flex plays this week and should be in more lineups than probably currently forecast on Sleeper. Malik Neighbors is at wide receiver 5 this week. Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 19, just missed quite a bit of preseason, so I'm a little low on him than I probably would be normally. Debo Samuel, plus that perimeter is going to be tough, as I sort of mentioned. Debo Samuel is at 31. Wan'Dale Robinson at 59. Darius Slayton at 63. Those last two could easily be considered flex plays if you're chasing in a deficit and need to get a result out. There's worse players to pick up, especially in a PPR league, than those two to potentially try and overcome a result. Dak Ertz is my tight end 19 this week, and Theo Johnson is tight end 28 this week. Not ones I'm desperately eager to get started at the tight end position this week. The Commanders I have at 4, and I think it will be the defense that wins the game this week for them. New York down at 28, despite what I'm saying. It is a good D, but I don't know how many turnover-worthy plays they're going to generate. Matt Gay is my kicker 10 on the week, and Graham Gano is my kicker 26 this week. Going to move over to the wide receivers here on the screen. Next game out of the chute is the Bengals and the Browns divisional matchup. Bengals favored by 4.5 points. The over and under set at 44.5. A lot of conservative lines here. Will be interesting to see how that one pans out. In terms of the quarterbacks here, I think there's going to be a lot more points than perhaps the line is scheduling. I would probably have this as an over. We'll watch this one for weather as well. It is in a weird place in the Midwest. There could be interesting weather conditions, so one to keep an eye on. With that, at the moment, it's forecast to be okay, but one to keep an eye on. It does change quickly over there. Joe Burrow is the quarterback for this week. Joe Flacco, 27. I think, first week back. Could be a rough time, although this Bengals defense is not particularly good. And in the Superflex League, I'd be starting him for the upside, but at the moment I have him a bit lower. I'm a little conservative with the ranks than I am with my lineups. Chase Brown is my running back 13 this week. Jerome Ford is at 33. Dylan Sampson is at 41. I'm not really starting Judkins or anyone else this week. I just think there's a long way to go. Those are the running backs you should be interested in when you're thinking about fantasy football this week. Jamar Chase, of course, is my wide receiver 1. T. Higgins, my wide receiver 13. But don't sleep on the Cleveland Browns wide receivers. Judy is at 23. Cedric Tillman is at 49. Those are two players I'd definitely be loading up on this week and would be quite happy to start Cedric Tillman in most leagues if I have him. I think this is a really advantageous matchup for him. David Njoku is my tight end 3 this week. Again, that matchup really plays into his favor. I think there's a lot of targets for him this week. Mike Gesicki is at 27. I won't be starting him in any leagues this week. I don't know if I actually have him on any rosters. Cincinnati Bengals are at 10. I think that the Browns are going to get down in this game. They're going to throw the ball, and we know that Joe Flacco can throw picks, so there will be the opportunity for that. Cleveland Browns at 29. I think that this offense is legit, and I think that they will score points on the Browns no matter how good the D is. McPherson is my kicker 3 this week. Great matchup. Andre Schmidt is the kicker. He is my last ranked kicker this week. Don't see much from him going into this one. Next matchup, Raiders-Patriots. This could be a really interesting game. I think it's going to be a real big defensive battle. 43.5 is the bet, is the line in the over-under. In terms of the line, the Patriots are favorites by 3.5 points. Feel that's accurate. I feel the nod goes to the coaching there more than anything else, as opposed to the players. I think there's a lot of excitement with the Raiders this year, and I think the Raiders had a really good offseason. I do think it's going to be interesting for them. I do think that they are going to get the opportunity to get more points this season and not look as bad as they did last season, that's for sure. When it comes to this one, when we look at the kickers here, a lot of talk about Drake May. He's at 8 this week. I think this is a great matchup for him. Geno Smith is at 26. I think this could be a bit of a struggle, but I wouldn't be surprised if I saw him finish in the top 16 of the position this week. Ashton Jeanty on his debut, I think, will be the running back 8. Then we've got, next up, Ramondre Stevenson is at 36. I think he will get the start and will get the early touches in this one. So one I'd be keeping an eye out on there. I feel like I've missed one. Sorry, I had Trayvon Henderson. I was thinking like, where is he? Trayvon Henderson is at 20. You would have seen that if you'd seen the screen. So Henderson's at 20, but I do think he's going to get, I think Stevenson's going to get the start. I think Stevenson's going to take the more workload than we will see in future games. I still think Henderson will shine through in this one. Moving on to the wide receivers. And the highest ranked wide receiver I have in this game is Stephon Diggs at wide receiver 36, followed by Jacoby Myers at 38, followed by Demario Douglas at 55. They're the only ones I'm interested in fantasy football this week. But I do think there could be more coming in future weeks. Brock Bowers is my tight end 1 as the main target of this offense. Hunter Henry is at 15. Good outside bet for a touchdown this week if you're looking for non-chalky touchdown chasing plays with upside. The Patriots are at 11 this week in DST rankings. The Raiders are at 23. And then Daniel Carlson's at 22. Andy Borgales is at 29 in terms of my kicker rankings this week. Going to move this over to the tight ends for the final two. You can catch up the other rankings on part 2. We have here the Cardinals versus the Saints. The Cardinals are only favorites by 3.5, which I think is nuts. I have the Cardinals to win by more than that. I think this will be a one-sided game. Over under 43.5. Again, I don't understand a 3.5 point game with the over under at 43.5. You're basically saying it's going to be a 23-20 game, and I just don't see that. I don't see a pathway to that happening. If the over under hits, is because, or if the under hits on the over under, I think it's because the Saints are going to struggle to get to 20 points in this one. In terms of the rankings this week, Kyler Murray is my quarterback 12 this week. Spencer Rattler is my lowest ranked quarterback this week. He is at 32. Did show some flashes against the Buccaneers last season, but I think it's been a tumultuous offseason trying to determine who that starting quarterback is, and I think it's a talent poor roster. Will be interesting to see what happens there as the weeks go on. I could be proven wrong, of course. James Conner is my running back 10. This is set up for him nicely. Alvin Kamara is my running back 12. I think he's going to get a lot of work in this one, but I'm not touching any of the other running backs in this game for sure. Looking at the wide receivers here, Marvin Harrison Jr. is at 17. Chris Olave is at 29. Rashid Shaheed is a really good upside play. He is at 48. They're the 3 wide receivers you'll be looking at in this game. And then we're looking at the tight ends. I have Trey McBride at 5. I have Juwan Johnson at 29. So only Trey McBride to consider this week. The Arizona Cardinals have a great matchup. They are the DST2 on the week. The New Orleans Saints are at 26 this week. And then looking at the kickers, Chad Ryland is at 13. Blake Grupe is at 23. And then finally, to finish this off, I just realized I was doing this on the screen you're watching instead of my other ranking sheet. So I'm just going to change this to the rest. You've seen the clicking around. I apologize. Last game is the Buccaneers versus the Falcons. Highest scoring game of this early slate, 47.5 points. The Buccaneers in this one are favored by 2.5. I think that they might do slightly better than 2.5. I think this will be a great game, good opener, see where both teams are, but I would expect the Buccaneers to pull this out by a little more than 2.5. Baker Mayfield is my quarterback 6 on the week. Michael Penix Jr., my quarterback 22 for this week. Moving on to the running backs, Bijan Robinson is at 3. Bucky Irving is at 7. Rashad White is at 42. Tyler Algier is at 49. Just those top 2 are the only ones I'd be worried about in this matchup. Lots of wide receiver injuries for the Buccaneers, but that just means more Mike Evans. He is at 11. Drake London is at 18. Emeka Ibuka is at 28. Those are 3 starting wide receivers. You can start them in all your lineups. This should be a good time to play them all. Darnell Mooney is at 54. He is questionable. I'm not necessarily sure that he is going to be 100%. That is one to watch in the coming days before you set your lineups. I don't think this is a game for the tight ends. Kyle Pitts is 17. This is typically a pretty decent matchup for tight ends against the Buccaneers, but Kyle Pitts, it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on. K. Dalton is carrying an injury. I have him down at 30. I'm not convinced how involved he is going to be in this game. And then I have the Buccaneers at 12, the Atlanta Falcons at 30. Again, I just think the Buccaneers will turn up for this one. I think they will win by more than 2.5 points. Chase McLaughlin is my kicker 1 this week. I fancy him to have a good one. Young Hoku, though, solid kicker. He's at 16, and you can definitely feel good about starting him in a pinch this week for sure. That's going to cover it for this week. Part 1, at least. That is your early slate booked. That is your rundown of all the games. Who are the favorites? How many total points you're going to get? We are going to be ready to wrap up part 2 tomorrow, where we will finish off the remaining 6 games. But until then, Rush Nation, good luck tonight. Enjoy the games. And as always, keep rushing.